Welcome back to the channel and welcome to this week's video. Today I'm going to be going through a Spanish translation, or in fact two Spanish translations with you. These are the last translations that I have to do for Spanish this term, and it was requested in a previous video that I go through an example of the sort of work that I have to do. So for those of you doing A-level Spanish and are wondering what sort of level we translate at uni in final year, then here we go. Anyway, if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, stick them in the comment section below. I will get back to you, and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get into it. Okay, so before I get started, we have two translations. The first one is from Spanish to English, and the second one is from English to Spanish. Now, we do both at the University of Oxford with varying degrees of complication, varying types of texts. This week, this was what I was set, and I have already done them. It would have been too long a video if I'd just been doing them while filming. The reason I'm looking over here is because that's where my computer screen is. Hopefully, you're seeing a screen recording so we can follow along. What I'm going to do is I am going to read sentence by sentence to go through it, to give you an idea of how I translated. I will probably be editing both translations as I go through, because this is what I do. I translate on one day and then 2-3 days later I go back to it and just make sure everything sounds right, okay? If anyone notices any mistakes, it will be too late by the time this video comes out, but please stick them in the comment section below. I will appreciate it. Okay, so number one. El 24 de diciembre de 1915, mientras tomaba té en su departamento de Berlín, Albert Einstein recibió un sobre enviado desde las trincheras de la Primera Guerra Mundial. So, on the 24th of December 1915, while drinking a cup of tea in his apartment in Berlin, now departamento doesn't usually mean apartment. If you're in Latin America, it does, and I think it makes most sense there. That's why I've gone for that. In Berlin, Albert Einstein received an envelope from the trenches of the First World War. It sounds a bit weird, but that is literally what the Spanish says, sorry. So I've sort of gone for the same. Next up. El sobre había atravesado un continente en llamas. Estaba sucio, arrugado y cubierto de barro. So the envelope had crossed, había atravesado, yes, pretty perfect, a continent in flames. It was dirty, creased, and covered in mud. Una de sus esquinas se había desgarrado por completo y el nombre del remitente estaba oculto tras una mancha de sangre. One of the corners had been ripped off entirely, or completely, I've got here, and the name of the sender was hidden by a bloodstain. Now, I thought about putting, and the return address was hidden by a bloodstain, but I felt as though it was straying a little bit too far away from the Spanish. It maybe would have sounded better in English, but I think it works better like that. Einstein lo tomó con guantes y lo abrió con un cuchillo. Einstein held it with gloved hands and opened it with a knife. Now, Einstein lo tomó kind of gives the impression that he's like picking it up, but I think it makes more sense here to say Einstein held it with gloved hands and opened it with a knife. Now, Einstein held it with gloves doesn't really make sense in English, because it would be like gloves floating around, so that's why I went for gloved hands. Adentro halló una carta con el último chispazo de un genio, Carl Schwarzschild, astrónomo, físico, matemático y teniente del ejército alemán. So, final sentence of this second paragraph. Inside, he found a letter bearing the last spark of a genius. That's what chispazo means, it's a spark. I did want to do something a little bit different. It doesn't sound quite right in English to say he found the last spark of a genius. It would have been nice to say something like the last great idea of a genius or something like that. I'm not really sure, but I think chispazo has this really vivid sort of light imagery, which means that I wanted to kind of keep that. So maybe the last light bulb, if we think of a cartoon moment of a genius, could work as well, but I'm just going to stick with spark, I think. Carl Schwarzschild, astronomer, physicist, mathematician, and lieutenant in the German army. Okay. Como puede ver, la guerra me ha tratado con la suficiente amabilidad a pesar del intenso tiroteo, como para poder escapar de todo y hacer esta breve caminata en la tierra de sus ideas. Gonna stop there. As you can see, despite the tense exchanges of gunfire, you can see I've swapped around some clauses there. The war has treated me with just enough kindness to escape everything and take this brief stroll through the land of your thoughts. Now, sus ideas, based on something that's coming up later, I think it's Schwarzschild using the formal of the you form in Spanish, usted, okay? So that's why it's sus. To take this brief stroll through the land of your thoughts. I think the brief stroll through a land of thoughts is quite nice. It's quite a nice image. It brings it across from the Spanish. Admittedly, there's probably a better option in English that gets the same sort of idea across, but I haven't really had time to properly think about it. And yeah, so if I had another 2 weeks, then maybe I'd come up with something better. And then that whole section in inverted commas, terminaba la carta que Einstein leyó estupefacto, pero no porque uno de los científicos más respetados de Alemania estuviera comandando una unidad de artillería en el frente ruso, ni tampoco por las crípticas advertencias que su amigo le hacía sobre una catástrofe venidera, sino por lo que venía escrito en el reverso. So long little section there. Let's have a look. On the back of the letter. There we go. So I changed this again because I don't think in English it makes sense to have that bit in inverted commas that is quoting the letter and then ended the letter that Einstein read, astonished. So I just changed it, made it a new sentence. Einstein read the final line of the letter, astonished, but not because one of the most respected German scientists was commanding an artillery regiment on the Russian front, but because of what was written on the back of the letter. Editing Arthur here, and as you may have realised, I've missed a clause there. It's about the cryptic warnings. Unfortunately, especially if I'm ordering clauses differently to the original, that does happen to me. And it happens to a lot of people, actually. You'd be surprised when translating, and I just need to try not to do it in the exam, basically. In this, it's not the end of the world. I'll let you know the feedback my tutor gave on the translation as a whole once I've finished this first one, so you can get an idea of how well I translated. So enjoy the rest of this. So, unidad de artillería, we don't really say an artillery unit, I would say an artillery regiment. I may be wrong, that might not be what we say, but that sounded nice to me. So, redactada en una letra tan minúscula que Einstein tuvo que usar una lupa para descifrarla, Schwarzschild le había enviado la primera solución exacta a las ecuaciones de la teoría de la relatividad general. So, written in handwriting so tiny that Einstein had to use a magnifying glass to decipher it. I didn't actually look up whether lupa is magnifying glass, I'm just assuming, I'll be honest. Schwarzschild had sent him the first exact solution, which is apparently a maths phrase, to the equations of the theory of relativity. There we go. Final paragraph. Tuvo que releerla varias veces. He had to reread it several times. ¿Hace cuánto había publicado su teoría? ¿Un mes? ¿Menos de un mes? How long had it been since he had published his theory? A month? Less than a month? Just following the same structure, I think it works quite well. Era imposible que Schwarzschild hubiera resuelto ecuaciones tan complejas en tan poco tiempo, si incluso él, que las había inventado, solo había podido hallar soluciones aproximadas. It was impossible that Schwarzschild had solved such complex equations in such a short time, even if he, who had devised them, in such a short time, if even he, who had devised them, had only been able to find approximate solutions. So again, keeping the structure the same, I think it works quite nicely. One thing that I was thinking of, hubiera resuelto. So because of era imposible que, you have to use a subjunctive after, in the verb after that clause. And you can't really translate that into English. So it's kind of in a pluperfect version of the subjunctive. So I've just, in English, have gone with the pluperfect, had, and then past participle. And I think it sounds all right. La de Schwarzschild era exacta. Describía perfectamente la manera en la que la masa de una estrella deforma el espacio y el tiempo a su alrededor. Schwarzschild's was exact. Now this bit again, I wasn't too sure about just repeating the Spanish. I think in English, sometimes it helps to say Schwarzschild's solution was exact and just repeat solution again. I did think we said solved solution a little too many times, so I did leave it like that. We'll see what the feedback is like. Schwarzschild's was exact. It perfectly described the way in which the mass of a star deforms the space and time around it. There we go. That's the end of that first one. Let me zoom out on this so you can see the whole thing. That's not quite enough. Let's go a bit more. There we go. And on this side, scroll up so you can see the whole thing there. So I thought that was a fairly easy translation. I barely used a dictionary, I don't think. Definitely on the easier side of the French to English translations we do, not complaining. Makes you feel confident. Okay, as I said, quite an easy translation. My tutor noted that, the rest of the class noted that, and sort of the feedback that I got reflects that as well. Other than the bit that I missed out, I had no comments. There were certainly extra things I could have added, certain words I could have changed to maybe make it sound a little bit better, but the feedback was lovely, a very idiomatic and sound translation. So if that came up in the exam, I'd be extremely happy. I really think I could smash something like that. But now let's get on to the slightly more challenging English to Spanish translation that we call prose at Oxford. So let's move on to the English to Spanish. Let's zoom back in so I can actually read the screen. Here we go. So, Hurstwood was an interesting character. Hurstwood era un personaje interesante. More likely to have mistakes in the Spanish I've written than in English I've written, I will say. So, bear with me. He was shrewd and clever in many little things and capable of creating a good impression. En muchos asuntos era astuto e inteligente y capaz de crear una buena impresión. I don't know why autocorrect has capitalized that B. This is why and autocorrect has also changed the spelling of impresión in Spanish. There we go. This is why we reread before we submit work. So I slightly changed the way this sentence is written. Again, I didn't really use a dictionary. I kind of wanted to see how well I could do. So, asunto is more like a topic or thing or problem or issue. And I think it just sounds a little bit better than saying, en muchas pequeñas cosas era astuto inteligente. I also don't like saying, in lots of little things, he was shrewd and clever, right? It sounds weird in English. It sounds even worse in Spanish, but that's sort of the best I could come up with. His position, which was fairly important, was that of a manager. I think I'll stop there. No, sorry, I'm going to carry on. A kind of stewardship which was imposing but lacked financial control. So, su puesto de gerente, I've moved the managing bit before the clause in between the dashes. Su puesto de gerente, un tipo de administración impresionante, pero que carecía control financiero, era bastante importante. So, su puesto de gerente is being referred to as un tipo de administración, a type of stewardship that was impressive, imposing, but that lacked financial control, okay? And then era bastante importante, I'm taking the which was fairly important clause in the English here and moving it to the end of the sentence in Spanish, okay? So just a little note here, as that's one of the sections that could have been improved. The bit that I've got there in between the M dashes, un tipo de administración impresionante, pero que carecía control financiero, definitely could have been made more idiomatic in Spanish. It's not bad, it gets the meaning across, but there would have been different ways to do it. I think what the point is that this man, yes, he's a manager, but they're definitely not letting him handle the money. And that's what I needed to try and get across. Some of my classmates had some better translations, but at the end of the day, it got the message across. And what apparently was really nice was era bastante importante, kind of it's like saying, yeah, he was quite useful, and putting it at the end emphasises it, which apparently they really liked. So, yes, let's carry on, and I'll interject with any more points of note. He had risen by perseverance in industry through long years of service from the position of barkeeper in a commonplace saloon to his present attitude. Again, bear with me, no dictionary or little use of dictionary, and probably quite tired when I did it. Con perseverancia y diligencia había ascendido, tras largos años de servicio, desde el puesto de camarero en un bar común hasta su altitud actual. Now, I wasn't too keen on translating altitude to altitud. I'm not sure you can use altitud in sort of the work setting, in the hierarchy in the workplace, but couldn't think of anything better, so that's what I went for. I think the structure of the sentence is pretty much the same there. I do apologise, I'm very tired. I guess he had risen by perseverance in industry. I've kind of swapped it round. With perseverance in industry, he had risen. I don't know why I've done that. Había ascendido con perseverancia y diligencia. I think that actually sounds better, so I might switch that around. Let's move that. There we go. Stick a capital letter there. Get rid of the C there. Okay. Había ascendido con perseverancia y diligencia. Tras largos años de servicio desde el puesto de camarero en un bar común hasta su altitud actual. He had a little office in the place set off in polished cherry and grill work, where he kept in a desk the rather simple accounts of the place, supplies ordered and needed, and so on. So, tenía una pequeña oficina en el lugar. I didn't really like saying he had a little office in the place. What, like in English, place can mean like the pub or the bar or wherever he works. It can mean the place as in the establishment. In Spanish, I couldn't find anything to me that gave that same impression, so I just went for lugar. It's kind of the simple solution. Tenía una pequeña oficina en el lugar con detalles de madera de cereza y enrejado, donde guardaba las cuentas del lugar en el escritorio. Repeating lugar there, I think is fine because the original repeats place. With the little bit about set off in polished cherry and grill work. I took cherry to mean cherry wood. That's why I've got madera de cereza. And I sort of see them as little accents in the room, in the furniture. And that's why I said con detalles. Where is it? Yeah, con detalles de madera de cereza y enrejado. Hang on though. Set off in polished. I need to translate polished. Con detalles lucidados. Lucir algo? Lucidados? I'm not actually sure that's a word. Word is telling me it's not. Okay, I'm going to highlight that in yellow, and once I've done this, I'm going to look up how to say polished. I thought lucir could meant like to shine, to polish. Maybe not. No, well, clearly not. I don't think it's a word. So we're going to give that a think later on. Anyway, I'd clearly forgotten to translate that. Where he kept the simple accounts of the place. Las cuentas del lugar en el escritorio. So again, I've just decided not to translate something. I've forgotten to translate the rather simple accounts of the place. Las cuentas sencillas, rather simple. I think simple. Cuentas sencillas del lugar en el escritorio. I think that works. Instead of a dash, I've got a colon. Suministros, pedidos y requeridos y demás. So supplies, ordered and needed, and so on. We're getting there. The chief executive and financial functions devolved upon the owners, Messrs. Hannah and Hogg, and upon a cashier who looked after the money taken in. Las actividades financieras, so that's I swapped them around. Okay, las actividades financieras y de alto ejecutivo. So yeah, swap financial function and chief executive functions around, and functions I turned into actividades. Las realizaron los propietarios los señores Hannah y Hogg. Y un cajero que se ocupaba de los ingresos. Money taken in, sort of income, ingresos works quite well there, I think. So yeah, swapped a few things around to make it sound a little bit better, in my opinion. There we go. Mid-yawn, we have another mistake to point out in this sentence, and this was one of two similar mistakes. You may have noticed it. I used the preterite in las realizaron, but because it was an action that they did as a habit over and over again, it should have been the imperfect las realizaban. It's quite a descriptive text. Really should have seen that, and the fact that I put se ocupaba in the imperfect means that really I should have put that in the imperfect as well. I knew it should have been that, but again, it's a mistake that is made sometimes. But let's carry on. Oh dear. For the most part, he lounged about, dressed in excellent tailored suits of imported goods, several rings upon his fingers, a fine blue diamond in his necktie, a striking vest of some new pattern, and a watch chain of solid gold which held a charm of rich design and a watch of the latest make and engraving. Long sentence, complicated, with weird vocab, so quite difficult. Por lo general no hacía nada. Vestido de trajes excelentes hechos de materiales importados, varios anillos en sus dedos, un elegante diamante azulado en su corbata, un chaleco llamativo con un nuevo estampado y una cadena de reloj hecha de oro macizo que sostenía un dije de diseño exquisito y un reloj de una marca de moda y con grabado novedoso. Now, what I found hardest about this was a watch of the latest make and engraving. So is it latest make as in it's brand new? Is it latest make as in it's from a fashionable brand? Fashionable brand. Marca does mean brand. So I decided in the end to just assume and split that up from the engraving. So a watch of the latest make, and I didn't see how an engraving could be of a latest make, so in the Spanish I swapped it out to be a new grabado, un grabado novedoso, and a watch of the latest make. Okay, I didn't translate it to the latest make, I translated it to a fashionable make. I thought that was a decent interpretation of what was being said. He knew by name and could greet personally with a old fellow hundreds of actors, merchants, politicians, and the general run of successful characters about town, and it was part of his success to do so. So, I think I swapped things around here, like I like doing. Let's have a look. Okay, parte de su éxito venía, so that bit at the start there, talking about how it's part of his success, I took from the end of the sentence in the English, right? Parte de su éxito venía del hecho de que conocía por nombre y con un hola hermano podía saludar personalmente a cientos de actores, comerciantes, políticos y una serie general. Serie general was quite a tricky one. What does that translate? A general run. So a general series de personas exitosas por toda la ciudad. I'm not sure I like this sentence in Spanish. Por parte de su éxito venía del hecho de que conocía por nombre y con un hola hermano podía saludar. Okay, no. When I first read it out, I just didn't respect my own punctuation. If I had respected my own punctuation, it would have been fine. So again, I also split up the, where is it? Could name and could greet personally with a old fellow. And instead of saying could greet, knew by name, and with a hello old fellow, could personally greet. I switched it around, thought it sounded better in Spanish. That's why. Okay, we're getting there. He had a finely graduated scale of informality and friendship, which improved from the how do you do he addressed to the $15 a week clerks and office attachés, who by long frequenting of the place became aware of his position, to the why old man, how are you, which he addressed to those noted or rich individuals who knew him and were inclined to be friendly. I think I got the tone of the why old man, how are you slightly wrong. Essentially though, we're going from something formal to something informal in the two greetings. I think that was the most important thing to get here. So, tenía una escala de informalidad y amistad que mejoraba del, and I don't think mejorar de a is strictly a proper structure, but we're giving it a go. Tenía una escala de informalidad y amistad que mejoraba del ¿cómo está usted? Very formal. Dirigido a los trabajadores y dependientes de bajo salario. $15 a week, I just said low wage. Que se dieron cuenta de su posición al pasar mucho tiempo en el lugar. Al, talking mejoraba de, this is now the al, hey tío, ¿qué tal? Now, I really think I've gone super informal here. Going, hey tío, is not something people say to anyone, but I felt like I really needed to try and get the old man, yo, how's it going? A little bit more in there than I could have done otherwise without using hey tío. Que dirigía a los individuos ricos o destacados que lo conocían y que tendían a ser amables. Inclined to be friendly can mean usually were friendly, which is what I've got here. Can also mean they were more likely to be friendly than some other people maybe. But that's what I went for in the end. Now, let me zoom out again. I will look up a word for polished. Let's have a look. Chat amongst yourselves. Turns out polished was slightly easier than I was expecting. I think it's just pulido. Con detalles pulidos de madera de cereza y enrejado. Okay, let me double check. Yep, no accent. Okay, now. Okay, so the general feedback on that translation was that it was significantly harder and quite mean, especially that sentence with all the clothes and the things he wears and etc. Other than that bit of preterite that should have been imperfect in the first paragraph, also in this last sentence, it should have been que se daban cuenta, not que se dieron cuenta, because again, they're there for a long time. It's something they realize over a period of time, okay? The hey tío we spoke about in class. Tío is mainly used in Spain to sort of affectionately greet an older male member of your family. Not a good shout here, but also not bad. It matches the formal to informal greetings that he uses. But the overall feedback I got, such a good effort here, just a couple of verb tense reconsiderations needed. That phrase in the opening passage, the one of un tipo de administración, is a tough one. Let's workshop in the class. So I only had 3 notes on the translation, which was that first sentence and the 2 preterites that should have been perfect. So I actually did really well again, which was nice. Some of my classmates had better translations, smoother translations in sections, but I was actually pretty pleased with that overall. So back to Arthur from a week ago, taking you through to the end. I hope you enjoyed that video. Very, very different to what I usually do. I've never actually sort of shown my work like that, but I thought that this was a decent opportunity to do so. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, as I say, please do give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. If you do have any questions about any of my translations, decisions, or you have more video ideas, then please stick them in the comment section below. I will take them into account, as I have done here. And yeah, subscribe if you haven't already. Stay tuned.